Start the show.
Hi, Liz. Welcome to Yarn on the House.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really happy to be here today.
Thanks for visiting us. Why don't you tell our followers or my followers what you do and what you're all about?
Well, I am an independent designer, and what I like to do is I like to do designs that you can do with any yarn weight, any size. I like to make things that are easily modifiable and that are pretty much every level of knitting. So that someone from almost a very beginner to someone who's been knitting for years can still enjoy knitting the pattern. So I spend a lot of time, probably more time than I should, in investing the different yarn weights and sizes for each pattern.
That's really nice. I like to hear that because I like the versatility of, the sizes and the patterns that you offer. So that's really cool. Your patterns are so lovely and so wearable. Where do you get your inspiration from?
Actually, I spend a lot of time, I study popular culture, I'm a grad student,
Okay.
so I spend a lot of time reading and watching television and watching movies and critiquing them.
Yeah.
So I actually get a lot of inspiration from stuff like that. It may not be the stitch pattern, but it'll be the color or the way it falls or how big it is, and I have a sketchbook, so
that's really
spend
cool.
a lot of time doing that too. And I'm a terrible sketch artist, so sometimes I have to commission my boyfriend to sketch things out for me because he's quite the artist. But I'm terrible at sketching, really. You don't want to see my sketches.
Now you're going to have to send us one so we can see your horrible
They're like little stick figures and boxes with no shaping, and it's bad.
So one of your most popular designs is the Traveling Woman shawl. That is a huge success. And you've recently revamped it and turned it into a whole collection. So tell us a little bit about that and what folks can expect with the new shawl pattern and stuff, because you've made some changes.
Yes, I have done. The pattern is now comprised of 4 parts. The original shawl, ta-da!
Yes.
A scarf and stole combination pattern, a sock pattern, and then a cowl pattern. And I was originally going to just re-release the shawl pattern with different sizes and different weights and percentages and yardages and exact figures. But I was like, if people want to see how big they can make a traveling woman with 500 yards of yarn, they can look at projects on Ravelry. That's already been done.
Yeah.
So how can I make the pattern better for people who aren't as comfortable modifying things on their own? So I knit the original shawl in 5 different yarn weights, and most of those yarn weights are in more than one size. I think some of them are even in 3 sizes. I have memorized this pattern now. Memorized. Down pat. Because I do most of my own sample knitting. It's how I process patterns.
Mm-hmm.
And so in there, they'll be able to do not only different sizes and different yarn weights, but modifications for making it lacier, modifications for making it for men, adding beads, enhancing the edge, adding eyelets to the stockinette body of the scarf. So I've done a lot to the original shawl to make it a little bit more exciting.
Yeah.
And plus, there's the amazing photography. I was fortunate enough to be able to bribe my boyfriend to take the pictures for me. He's a photographer.
Cool.
So I'm really happy about that. But my favorite, I think, in the collection is the scarf, the traveling scarf.
I was going to say that.
That's my favorite one, and I'm not wearing it now because you can't really see it because it goes down to my tummy.
Down, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But that's absolutely my favorite. Dee Dee from Little Red Bicycle dyed up the yarn, and I saw it, and I was like, mine. Mine. Give it to me now. I actually stole it from her when we were at Stitches West last year. And I grabbed it, and I knew I wanted to make a traveling woman with it. And when I made the scarf, I knit a sample with just the edge, and I was really bored by it, so I added eyelets to it, enhanced the edge a little bit, and I really like the end result, and I worked it out to maximize every single inch of yarn.
That's good.
Yeah, and I'm working on the stole and worsted weight now, so that pattern is one that is easily done with any yarn weight, any size you want.
That's really exciting. That's one that I will definitely be knitting. It's really nice.
I want to make 4 more.
Exciting.
Yeah.
You'll have that one memorized too soon. So
Yes, I will.
So for budding new designers out there, what's your one piece of advice you can give them?
Use lifelines.
That was simple enough.
Since I spend a lot of I love the wraparound shape of the semicircle and the soft triangle. I spend a lot of time knitting a plain body or a simple lace body or a garter body even, and I get to the lace and I'm off by a couple stitches, or I didn't chart it right, or I didn't convert it from my brain to the paper the right way. use lifelines. There's nothing more irritating than ripping back and then dropping a stitch and then ruining the whole thing and getting mad and setting it on fire.
Setting it on fire.
I was experimenting with a traveling woman in a different yarn weight for a completely different shape, kind of like a raglan increase instead of a centerline increase, and it just was not working. And it would have worked if I would have put a lifeline in.
Put a lifeline, and then you just got so frustrated you
that
just
it's
stopped.
in a bad place.
Yes, it's in the corner.
It's in my bad cubby.
So what's next for you outside of this new collection? What can you give us some secrets? Share something with us?
Well, there's a little tidbit. I'm doing an exclusive design for the Little Red Bicycle Yarn Club of Unspeakable Horror.
Oh.
Yes, it is modeled after H.P. Lovecraft, the Pulp Fiction author.
Okay.
And so I'm doing an exclusive design for that, and it'll be released, of course, later in 2011. But it's going to be really interesting. It's pretty unique. I don't think I've seen anything like it out there. It is a scarf.
Exciting. Okay.
Spoiler alert. So there's that coming, and then I'm started to really get involved with sport weights.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by sport weight. It is knitting's neglected child.
It is,
It really is. And I really have gotten into one-skein projects, like the shawls and the cowls and hats and the mittens. And I want to take sport weight, especially luxury blends, like A Verb for Keeping Warm has some great alpaca silks and merino silks, and making a small luxury item that even though you splurge a little bit on the yarn, you still get a perfect finished object. So you're going to be seeing a lot of one-skein, fingering, of course, sport, and even some DK and worsted weight for me in the next year.
Cool. Very exciting. So I always like to ask, why do you knit?
I actually learned to knit because I wanted to learn how to knit cables. I was a crocheter for years. My mother crochets those massive Afghans, and
Yeah.
if you look at my mother, that makes no sense. She has 2 Harleys. She races for Mini Cooper. Like, she has her Diet Pepsi and Crown with dinner every night. And so it's not at all what you would expect of her. But my stepdad is an avid football fan, so she has to do something. And she said,
yeah, right.
exactly. And as the season progresses, the blanket gets bigger and she gets warmer and the weather gets colder. So I would always crochet really long, skinny scarves that were elaborate stripes and crazy colors because that was what I liked. And then I was like, I want to knit cables. I want to do cables. I was always so intrigued by them. And I hate cables. I hate knitting cables.
I was
don't
going
like
to say, you don't have a lot. I don't really see cables in your designs.
No, I do them in my sock pattern sometimes, but it's only because I recently challenged myself and learned how to knit cables without a cable needle.
Yes. Isn't that much better?
Oh, God, what was I missing out on?
So now cables aren't so bad, are they?
Cables aren't so bad, but if done well, they're beautiful. But they can be done poorly. But people like Ysolda Teague do beautiful things with cables, like with her Vivian hoodie. I really want to knit that, but I don't think I'm quite there yet with the cable needleless cables. So, I mean, it just goes to show that I've only been knitting for 3 or 4 years at this point, and I'm learning new skills. Pretty much every time I knit, I learn new bind-offs all the time. People are always like, well, I don't want to mess up the shawl. I don't want to knit it and do it wrong. The only way you can learn how to knit better is if you try something new.
Yeah.
So
You have to challenge yourself in order to get better. So, yeah.